Financial advice is like yoga. It's a practice. The best advice is know yourself. Be honest with what your risk profile is.
Howard Lindzon.
He's a trend follower, entrepreneur, venture capitalist.
The first check-in to Robinhood.
Literally sat on all sides of the table.
The point is you're less douchebaggy than most Wall Street guys.
I have a cynical, weird view of the world, and luckily the people trust me to express my view of the world. This goes to my beef with venture capitalists.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Everybody on Twitter, we're all experts on 9 things.
What's your beef on venture capitalists today? So welcome, Howard.
Is this real? Are we on this?
We're live. We're
Okay.
live.
Hey, buddy.
How's it going?
Good.
Welcome to the studio. Glad to have you here. You're one of my first few guests.
What a treat this must be for everybody.
This is, I mean, people are going to enjoy this. You're
People surprise.
you're a
here's the
colorful
thing.
character.
Here's the thing. People, when they describe me, always lead with an insult, and I never take it as an insult. So I was just,
I can't
I was
insult you.
riding, I was telling the guys, I was riding with like a Tour de France cyclist, retired, and he pulls up next to me and goes, "You're surprisingly athletic," which is kind of like a mean thing to say.
Yeah.
But as a 50-year-old Jewish guy, I'm like, fucking nicest thing an athlete's ever said to me. So I'd probably be a surprisingly good guy.
That's the thing. Like, you've had me on your show before,
Mm-hmm.
Panic with Friends,
Yeah.
Howard Lindzon, and it's always great being a guest on your show. But I noticed you don't really do a lot of podcasts, and people don't really interview you much. And
No.
the fact that you kind of live between here and Phoenix, back and
Yeah.
forth in San Diego, it's great to have you in person for a recording.
Yeah, we are friends, so it's the first time we met in person.
Was in Vegas, I think.
No, you had just sold your company. We
But,
were in
we-
fucking Ireland.
No, we met in Vegas before that.
Oh, you're right.
We met at the Money 2020 conference in 2014.
You're right. But you hadn't thought of the new idea. You
Not
thought
yet.
of the new idea when
Not
we were
yet.
golfing in Ireland.
Yeah, in Ireland. Yeah. Well, I thought of the
Funny.
name then, but yeah.
Funny Vinny stories.
We can get into those stories, but let me give the audience a quick introduction on you. Howard's literally one of the most legendary investors to ever come out of tech. His seed investments are things like Robinhood, which I think everyone's heard of. Things like Beehive, which is new and up and coming. Manscaped. You in Twitter, weren't you?
I passed. Was in Twitter deep through other investments.
Okay.
But I actually passed on the actual seed
Oh, you
round.
passed.
Fred Wilson offered me.
Oh my gosh, how do you feel
Yeah.
about that one?
It's funny. The guy who took my 25K shares,
Yeah.
Jeff Pulver.
Yeah.
Who's also he started VoIP. Like the guy
Okay.
was a legend.
Yeah.
So the story with Fred, and I've told it before, but the real story is Fred's a mentor of mine. He's the legend, right? Like
Yeah.
I was just some guy trolling him on his blog back in the day, and he invested in my first startup,
Mhm.
a tech startup, which was a YouTube show called Wall Strip. And so Fred mentored me. I don't know what I was doing. It was kind of like Seinfeld. We had a show about nothing on YouTube. CBS acquired it, and I'm now in the group. I'm friends with Fred. And that comes with, it's expensive to be friends with Fred because he sends you deals. Like he wants to return the favor, but this isn't like, here's a $50,000 mint code. It's like, would you like to risk your capital in a deal that I like? So it's not really a gift, but it kind of is a gift. You can't say no.
What would you say has been your biggest investment hit so far?
It's a good question. Probably Apple,
Okay.
just owning it. But
But I mean, as a seed investor.
seed invest for my LPs, it would be Customer.
Okay.
Which
Yeah.
what Gary led, which
Yep.
was Alex.
I'm an
Pino.
LP and
Yeah,
social
you're an
leverage
LP,
as well.
meaning we kept our percentages
Yeah,
throughout.
yeah.
So there's many stories to tell. So anyways, on the Twitter story, Fred calls me. This is 2007.
Yeah.
So prices were not like where they are today, and Twitter was already fail whale, right? There was
Yeah,
already
yeah.
traction.
Yeah.
And so Fred calls me, goes, Howard, leaning around in Twitter, 3 on 17. I go, what the fucking drugs are you on? Who does rounds 3 on, back then it was like 1 on 2. StockTwits raised at a $600K valuation. We did TweetDeck at a $2 million valuation. Bitly was a $2 million valuation. So Twitter at 17, I'm like, you're high. Like, didn't say that to him, but I said, I don't know. How am I going to, basically the words out of my mouth were, if I invested 20 million, how am I going to make 10 times my money?
Exactly, and
That
that's
literally is how dumb I am.
but no, but that's true though. But that is the
That was the
is-
beginning of network effects. No
Yeah,
one really understood it.
Sure,
Fred did.
we didn't see the big opportunity there in general.
No, but my reasoning was so dumb.
Yeah.
How am I going to make 10 times my money? It made 10 times the
I wanna
money
pause on this
by the
point.
time I wired the money.
I want to pause on this point because I think for people listening, when you have seed investors putting money into companies, they can't make 2x returns or 3x returns. You think that like for the amount of risk you're taking,
Right.
putting in $25,000, $50,000, $100,000 check, if you're going to get 5, 10, 15%, you might as well leave the money in interest. Or
Well, especially even in a zero interest
Yeah,
rate world,
zero
I
count.
would almost say that. In a
Exactly.
6% interest rate world, you need to make 100 bagger
Absolutely,
for real.
absolutely, because
people are
on a
still
risk-adjusted
running around.
basis. Yeah.
I don't even want to get going now. I'm just an old man yelling at the TV. But the biggest lesson I ever had was if Fred Wilson calls you, don't ask him anything.
Just give them the money.
Just send the money. And of course, after that mistake, I did 2 deals with Fred that went to zero.
Of course, of course.
So I'm saying, like,
But for the listeners, Fred Wilson is Union Square Ventures.
Yeah.
He's
the GOAT.
He is the GOAT. He's one of the GOATs. It's him. It's
Yeah.
Bill Gurley, another GOAT.
Brad Feld is a
Brad
mentor of mine,
Feld, yeah.
Roger Ehrenberg,
Yep.
people that are
Yeah.
famous.
Yeah. So these guys have been in venture a long time, and everyone looks up to them. And I think Howard, you're in that sort of upper echelon, to a large degree, in my opinion.
Well, I appreciate that.
And you know what else? Like I think you're also an entrepreneur, which
Yeah.
is close to my heart. I do both. I do investing. I'm an entrepreneur, so we're very similar in that
Yeah.
sense. And you've built companies. You've co-founded Stockwoods is
Yeah.
one of them,
Yeah.
which is still around and doing really well right now.
Yeah. We're growing, and I'm like more excited about it than ever.
you're still the
It's
chairman
16
there?
years later. Yeah.
And then you had a hedge fund at one point.
Yeah.
And now you're a general partner at Social Leverage.
Yeah.
Which I invested in multiple funds in already because
Yeah.
you guys are great returns, right? You paid off the previous fund I was in already, which is fantastic. And so I'm trying to make my show a lot more variety based. So I want to give people the context on your background. But I know, like from knowing you really well over the past decade or so, you've got some really interesting stories to tell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was born on third base. So we'll start there. Like, so people don't, I'm not
Okay.
because the humble brags are unfortunate in our industry because I'm born of privilege.
Yeah.
So just put it out there. But even if you're born of privilege, there's a great comedian who goes, that's not
You're Canadian. So
if you're born of
yeah.
privilege, it would be a pity not to act on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm born in Toronto. My grandparents were Holocaust survivors, like a lot of people that grew up in Toronto. You have the Polish, Jewish people, immigrants come over. So Canada's a big Jewish population. I grew up, luckily, middle class. My dad was a lawyer. So I see the world optimistically. Like that's just the way
And
it
you
is.
should.
Yeah,
You should.
I mean, you grew up white Jew Toronto in the 70s, safe city.
Mhm.
Your dad's a lawyer. I don't know. World's pretty good. You
Yeah.
grew up around a Jewish community that has takes education seriously. Anxiety would be your biggest problem.
So which school did you go to?
I went to a school called Forest Hill Collegiate,
Okay.
which is in the area of Toronto called Forest Hill, which is pretty wealthy Jewish neighborhood,
Okay.
mostly.
And so when you graduated there, what did you do?
It was a little fuck up for a few years. I went like a lot of kids. So this would be 80. I was 17. I left home. I hated being at home. So 17. So it was 1982. And Canada had an extra year of high school, so you only had 3 years of college. I don't forget what it is now. So I went to a school called London, Western University. It was where all parties. It was a party school and a good school. Party school, like the ASU of Canada. I don't know, Arizona State, which I also went to. And I partied and wasn't much of a student. And they don't give out good grades. Like they didn't give out good grades back then. If you weren't a good student and you got B's and C's and you just couldn't. And it's pre-internet, pre-everything, and there's no entrepreneurship pre-internet, really. Like, if you want to be an entrepreneur in Toronto in the 70s, what are you going to do? Open a sock store or like a clothing store? There was no scale.
I hear this.
There was no scale.
I hear this story often. I mean, entrepreneurship is something which I grew up with watching, my parents and their business, watching things like Bill Gates and Richard Branson. It was always like small business, and then it was like the big giants. There was
Yeah.
nothing really in between.
No in between. It
No-
was a
no in
big bang
between.
moment.
Yeah.
So as an entrepreneur, yeah, I was an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I washed cars. I just wanted cash.
Yeah.
I washed cars. I did window washing. I didn't want to work an office job, so I worked at summer camps. Wherever I could. I guess that's entrepreneurial, but it wasn't like it wasn't cool to be an entrepreneur. You were going to be.
Yeah.
You had to be a lawyer, doctor,
You get laughed
accountant.
at. You get laughed at. Yeah.
Yeah, you were a failure to your
Yeah.
family. So there was that pressure, but in my heart, I was an entrepreneur. And guess the only place you really can be an entrepreneur at scale is the United States. So at least I sniffed that out.
Mm-hmm.
And I snuck over there. We had a home in Arizona. Most Jewish people in Toronto go to Florida. My dad picked Arizona for whatever reason. He liked the desert. And so I got, as a kid, I got to experience the Sun Devils and sun and golf and like the life of a Arizona person. I was like, you kidding? Sun and like Arizona State. So I applied to go to school there and I did my MBA there.
Oh,
And I
fantastic.
moved to Arizona, and that's kind of mostly lived there the rest of my life.
Okay. So how did you get into tech? What was it? How did you get into?
Well-
I should say finance and then
I
tech.
still am not a tech person.
Okay.
So literally,
I mean, you're more like fintech, right? So
Yeah,
financial
I-
technologies.
yeah, my heroes are like Dave Letterman, Johnny Carson, Larry David.
Jerry Seinfeld.
Not a hero, Larry David, but
Larry
definitely
David?
Jerry Seinfeld.
Jerry Seinfeld.
More Kramer than Jerry Seinfeld.
I love Jerry Seinfeld.
Right, I love the brain and the
Yeah.
success, but it's Larry David who makes me
Larry
laugh.
David's great.
Jerry doesn't make me laugh, but we know he's the funniest guy.
What do you think of RFK Jr.?
I know you're a fan. We don't need to get into the politics of it. We have nothing but bad candidates.
Yeah.
He's not a serious person,
Okay.
meaning none of them are. So I can't, compared to what? A shoe?
No, I wonder because he's married. His wife is. Sharon.
Yeah. Here's what I know.
Yeah.
He's more tolerable than Larry David. That's not a high bar, because Larry David is exactly what you would think he's like. Okay.
Okay.
So,
So you've met Larry David?
I've met enough people that know him,
Okay.
that see him playing golf.
Apparently
and-
he's in like Santa Barbara area now or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I met enough people, like luckily
Yeah.
in my life, because he's my idol.
He's hilarious. I mean, he's hilarious. Kobe Enthusiasm is
Here's the
fantastic.
thing.
What a show.
Most people wake up and they go, whew. They're like, that was a hot dream.
Yeah.
My wake up and I'm like, I think I made Larry David laugh. Like, I have the dumbest dreams. I'm like, my dream is to have David Letterman laugh out loud. Like, my fantasy was always, I get famous enough and I get on Dave Letterman's show. And Dave just invites me over. Like, and so when I grew up, I did stand-up comedy.
Well,
So
if Dave's watching the show, just ping us. We'll connect you with Howard.
he's washed up. I don't like the beard. I would want to go on Conan's podcast. That would be
Conan now.
so. The new Ultimate with me and we'd go on Conan's show, who has
Okay.
the best podcast because it's so different.
Okay.
And I copied so Panic with Friends is based on his show. Conan Needs a Friend. It's a really great podcast. I was not a Conan fan my whole life because I grew up with David Letterman and Johnny
But now
Carson.
you are?
Well, he's so talented
He is
that you
talented.
can't imagine.
Yeah.
And
Creepy
so
sometimes
people-
as well. A little creepy.
yeah, but I'm saying Joe Rogan's creepy too. Anybody who's good at their craft is creepy. You hope they wouldn't be. What amazes me about him is he only talks about himself,
Mm.
and I put up with it. Like, he has this great guest, and he doesn't even talk to him. And I think that's a gift, to be able to still get you to tune in, and he's not asking the questions you really want to even. He's just having a blast
Yeah.
being a comedian. So my whole fantasy as a kid was to be a comedian, because I grew up in the 70s in Toronto, and the 70s was like being an engineer at Stanford 10 years ago would
Yep.
be. Meaning Second City Television, Saturday Night Live takes off. Canada was Comedy Central. You had Super Dave Osborne, you had John Biner, and you had Second City Television, John Candy, Eugene Levy, Joe Flaherty, Jim Carrey,
Oh, yeah, Jim
Mike
Carrey.
Myers. So I would go to comedy clubs when I was like 15, 16, and fucking Jim Carrey would be doing, no one knew him. He was killing it doing Muppet stuff when he was 15 years old. And Mike Myers was doing character
Yeah.
bits, and he was 11. I don't know how young these guys were, but they were on stage. So when you grow up and that's your world,
Mm-hmm.
that's who you wanted to be. So I was doing stand-up comedy through high school, so bad, but so loving the life, and my gift became writing bits for, like, a comic would come off and he'd just get booed or bombed. I'm like, if you change this, you got a joke. Because if you didn't write for them, they stole whatever was good for you. So that's how gross comedy was. The real problem that turned me off of comedy is I would go to a show and I would do 3 good jokes, and I'd come back the next week and another comic would be doing my joke. It was fucking brutal. It's kind of like software copy. It's kind of like Facebook copying Snapchat. So the only way that kept me in the business, I wrote. And you get no recognition, and the comic gets all the laughs, but I knew how to wordsmith stuff.
So the comics.
So that was what got me going.
So you tell me comics don't actually write their own scripts?
The best ones do.
Okay.
I carry notes everywhere, but like most will pay writers. Oh yeah. That's what made Conan great. He was the writer. He was behind the scenes of Saturday Night Live writing.
I was thinking about doing stand-up comedy. I just don't think I'm funny enough.
I don't think it's about the funniest people that do stand-up. The amount of fucking poise it takes. So I just did it in New York. I took so when I'm very into comedy, late life, meaning I don't want to go be a comic, but I've done it. So I went to a famous club in New York and invited my daughter and a bunch of friends, and I did it. And it was a pretty friendly crowd, and that's enough. I didn't bomb, and my daughter was not horrified.
I never thought of the idea of just getting someone to write a script for me.
It's amazing.
My
big idea on stage.
I always thought you had to come up with your own script.
Here's what you do. You and I go on stage, and we pitch the audience a Silicon Valley idea. It would kill. Meaning, if we seriously went up with a slide projector, dressed as nerds, as if we were pitching Andreessen, and just went. This is what makes great comedy: is you stun the audience, right? You have to have this poise, right? Which is why why the fantasies about the pros like Conan or Dave Letterman. They had such poise, and they could take such shit about themselves.
With a straight face as well.
And so the way for you to do stand-up would be Vinny. And the best way to be Vinny is talk about crypto or talk about whatever passionate you are about and convert the audience.
I'm going to do
It's about winning over the audience. Anyways, it's.
So how did you go from stand-up comedy to did you start your hedge fund first?
No, so I graduated from ASU. So I'm Canadian, no green card. So the first problem becomes
go back home.
So the first one is you can't go back home. So you'll take any job, not to get your green card. So my goal, I have an MBA. I'm in Arizona.
What was the so any job you get will get you a green card?
No, you have to get a good enough job that someone will sponsor you.
Sponsor you.
Like I had no money. I'm like my parents are in Canada. I don't talk to my parents. You know, I moved away when I was young, so I couldn't rely on that. And I knew I wanted to be in Arizona, but you know, I'm 23, 4 years old. I don't know. I'm not adult. There's no hashtag adulting. Like there's just there's no Wikipedia. There's no Craigslist. There's the newspaper. There's the newspaper, and you take a pen and you go, oh, $6 an hour, cold call. Like literally, that wasn't that long ago. And so I did what most people did that weren't lawyers or doctors. I became a stockbroker, which was you pick up the phone and you make 1,000 cold calls a day.
Like Boiler Room?
Yeah. No, it was a professional firm. Is one step up from Boiler Room. Meaning we didn't sell the shit. We would sell Blockbuster or Compaq Computer or Dell.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
The stuff that was going to shit.
The stuff on the way to shit. It wasn't shit like when we were selling it. So it's this firm called Principal, Epler, Garrett and Turner, which got bought by Kemper, which got bought by Dean Rauscher, which, you know, brokers get bought out. Anyways, I became a stockbroker.
Okay.
It wasn't called money manager back in the day. It was
So you were
literally
Series 7 exam?
Series 7.
Yeah.
And I just picked up the phone and started smiling and dialing. And I was good at it. I hated every minute of it. But they sponsored me, and they got me. And slowly I worked to get legal in the United States. And it was the worst recession. Like people are talking. So
What year was this?
1990, you had the Gulf War.
This is where Clinton beat.
So you have the
Bush.
you have the crisis, you have the Iraq War, you have the Kuwait War, you have massive recession in the United States. Banks were going under. The thrift savings and loan crisis, which started in Arizona. So I'm going into the job. No one had money,
Yeah.
like literally. And then Starbucks and Blockbuster, like that's what tech was back then. They went public, and that blew people's minds because they were growing. They were like growing organically, but with hard work, no tech, just opening stores
Yeah.
everywhere. And then I got hooked on growth. I'm like, okay, the stock market isn't about financials. It's about finding an idea that can grow exponentially and then just eventually selling when you think they can't open more stores. Like before tech, the whole metric in Wall Street was same store sales. Same store sales ran Wall Street for 1,000 years. And if you're Walmart, it kind of still does. Now this thing is multiple of sales, like your margins, and like, so the world was different back then, and I
Well,
hated.
let's double click on that for a second.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting point, an observation, I would say, that the way Wall Street values or valued revenues and growth back then is different to the way they do it right now.
Mm.
What would you say are the two distinct differences?
Well, the distinct differences were Wall Street loves formulas, as we see, and we were talking earlier about Reddit and GameStop, and we'll come back to that maybe at some point. So the world before the internet was very measurable at some level. A company had a framework that they could easily fit into, right? There was profits. You had to show profits because there was no internet. There was no margin.
Yeah.
Like you got to open a store. It takes a certain amount of time to open a store. And there's so many neighborhoods that could support this store. So everybody had a plan for how big something could be. There was like, if you could understand the TAM, because you could before the internet, you could predict the TAM because it was physical. The world wasn't a physical, it wasn't a digital world. So if the world's this size and there's this many neighborhoods that could support a Starbucks, you could exponentially just figure it out. And so the world just seemed more organized.
So something like, just to simplify it, if you have 100 stores making $100,000 a year profit, and you open 10 more,
If the world thinks you can open 100 more,
100 more, then you know you're going to double the next year. So as
Yeah.
long as the projections make sense, you can kind of buy on a growth.
so that just got
forward
my
growth projection.
attention. That just like, instead of like looking at companies like that, I just said, I just want to find companies that can grow. And I don't need to be the first investor. I don't need to be the last investor. That got me into the idea of trend following. So that's the double click there. And that quickly led to me understanding how the world of investing works, you know. And early on, I decided I hated selling. I'd prefer to be building in that world. But it was still pre-internet. So pre-internet, the idea was if you weren't selling stocks, you were buying stocks. And if you weren't rich enough to buy stocks, you started a hedge fund, which means you put on a hat and you tell other people that you're better than a mutual fund. So you're schlocking yourself.
Sounds like Michael Burry.
Yeah. So I was like a very funny Michael Burry. Not as talented, but funny. And so people trusted me, and that was what I treaded. You know, people just trusted
So how much
me.
did you raise for your hedge fund?
It was never over 100 million.
Okay, that's still significant. I mean, 100 million is
Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing.
especially
then.
for back then. And we're talking 20 years ago.
Yeah, and that's just friends,
Yeah.
meaning people that I was in business with, and didn't start out at 100, maybe 20 or 30. And it was just a nice little business for me, and I learned the market. I knew nothing. This is when I realized that, like, oh my God, the minute I got into it, I'm like, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing. But that was what being an entrepreneur was.
Yeah, isn't that the same for all entrepreneurs?
So I'm saying before the internet, if you were Jewish, and again, I make fun of Jewish because Jewish people have this guilt when they're raised in a nice neighborhood. You got to be a doctor, lawyer, accountant. If you said hedge fund manager, your parents could theoretically
Disown you.
no, they could tell their friends that you did
Oh.
something. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if you
Yeah.
came and said, "Oh, he has a shoe store," they would make up something. But if you said hedge fund, it was almost accepted at the level of. But anyway, I was terrible at it because picking companies is very different than managing the portfolio, as we've all learned,
Yeah.
and people will learn. Meaning, there's a big difference between investing and managing a business.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a big difference between being a founder and an operator.
Yes.
And so I'm a good founder, I'm a terrible operator. And in a hedge fund world, that meant if I didn't have a number two that really knew how to like do everything else, I'd spend all my
Well,
time,
I'm the
all
same.
my quality time.
I'm exactly the same. I mean,
Yeah.
all my companies, I have CEOs for
Yeah.
that run things. I'm a terrible operations person.
Yeah.
But I'm great at like as a founder, product person, product vision. Like, so I can totally relate to that. I think it's part of the problem is that the operational role isn't very creative.
The other problem is if you don't have a good operator, you're screwed as a founder.
That's true as well.
So no one told me that.
Oops.
Meaning, it's one thing to know that you're not a good operator. It's another thing to have someone that tells you what a good operator is.
Mm.
So the other big change
And
that changed the world more than
Yeah.
people give it credit for is Excel.
Yeah.
So sorry, you're double clicking into growth.
Yeah.
We forget to think about what the world lived like
Before Excel.
before Excel was. Sorry, I saw my dad ran a public company. He was a lawyer. You taped pieces of paper together in the 70s with a pencil and built models across 20 pieces of white paper in a CFO's office with a calculator.
Crazy.
Crazy. Not that long ago. And so the biggest change in all of business, I call it, there's been two huge changes. The Excel, the world moved to Excel. Because what did Excel do? It allowed for acquisitions to happen. Meaning, imagine sharing your paper with the guy's paper next door who you thought would. By the time you did the diligence to figure out what was that, versus Excel, which allowed everybody to formulaically make something and compare things.
Technically, it was Lotus 1, 2, 3 first, right?
Oh, sorry, but the spreadsheet. Sorry, I'm not tech exactly. Lotus and absolutely.
Just give credit where credit's due. Microsoft sold that one.
And by the way, he made a lot of money. The guy from Lotus, I forget his name. I think he might have done after that dope. Anyways, so the spreadsheet. If people
changed
really
the world.
want to know,
It changed the
it
world.
was the internet.
Yeah.
But I've lived through another big bang, which was spreadsheet.
Well, so the PC computing revolution from like the 80s to the late 90s.
Without the spreadsheet, though, it goes
spreadsheet,
nowhere.
and I would say Word as well. Like just
word processor.
Do you remember there was like what is the first one was Word Word Perfect.
Word perfect.
Remember Word Perfect? Yeah, that was the first one, and the first one I used.
These
anyway.
kids today can't appreciate it, but listen, dude.
And
Not that I'm good at Excel, just like I'm not good at the internet. But man,
Yeah.
think about what the
Well,
magic that could be done
Before that.
globally when you could compare numbers. And so
now we've
that
got
was
like
the
we've
first
got collaboration
big bang.
tools. Like we've got your ability to share Google Sheets or Excel files and
But not as
collaborate.
big as the bang that we
but that was
had.
incremental.
The next big bang was mobile. And there's possibly the next big bang. We don't know.
We can skip crypto and say AI.
We don't know. I
think
like
it's AI.
AI, but I
think
don't
it's
think
AI.
it'll be. I think I like AI, like WhatsApp AI. I like AI in some things. I don't think it's like a big bang.
I know. I think that's right.
I think we live in a
I
world
think-
where everybody's hoping for the next big bang.
I think AI is going to do two things. It's going to kill a lot of jobs,
Mhm.
but it's also going to make a lot of people more productive in their existing jobs, so they have more free time for themselves.
Yeah, but the next big bang is not tech. It's interest rates, meaning it's not fun.
When you say
Yeah.
Big Bang, is it explosion or collapse or?
No, I just think the next big tidal wave is like, hey man, I can earn 6%. Like, 2 years ago, if you wanted to deposit $1 million in J.P. Morgan, you paid them to hold your money.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
And there was people that were willing. They do the All In podcast supposedly. No, I'm just kidding. But there was people out there saying this was going to be the new normal.
Yeah.
That like the movie Blow, like everybody should go, a good business movie, the movie Blow, which is, remember they had so much money?
Penelope Cruz, that one.
Yeah. Great. There was a scene where they had so much cash, they couldn't they were buying houses to store the cash.
Yeah.
That's where we were with money
Yeah, 2 years ago.
2 fucking years ago.
Now it's
And people
different.
thought that was just going to continue.
You probably saw the market this week. It's insane. The yields are
So
all-time highs.
as I sit here today, the next big bang is an unbang.
Yeah.
But it's still a big bang. It's going to change the way we think about investing, which could be hard assets. These things can go on for a while. It could be commodities. It could be new commodities like digital assets, like
Well, what are you
Bitcoin.
putting your money into?
Could be uranium.
What are you putting your money into right now? Where are you
I'm so
investing?
misallocated. Right. So
What's your biggest allocation?
cash,
Okay.
and it's been for a while.
But you're earning interest.
I'm
It's
still,
free money.
but I wasn't for. I was earning 2-3% for a year. or
But you
two.
didn't get hammered when everything tanked.
But I didn't make 30%. So again, everybody wants the perfect answer.
Yeah.
I would say I'm comfortably misallocated because I'm 58 years old and I don't have to pick the next Google.
Yeah.
So
So cash first, then what?
cash first, startups. I feel that's still my best hedge because, again, here's what I would think about startups, especially in an exponential network world. and I've always hated options in stocks. Meaning, I don't hate them. I just don't get it. So when you buy an option stock, and Robinhood kind of made it more normal, but I don't know how normal it really is, but it's a trend that's still in vogue, is you are betting that this will happen. But every day that it doesn't happen, you lose money. That fucking makes no sense.
AKA theta decay.
I just hate that idea. What gets me excited is selling it, which is completely dangerous.
I mean, I bought some options the other day, and I lost my shit on it.
That's what I'm saying. I don't like buying.
But it's rebounded the past few days, and I'm actually in a huge profit. So
No one can get me to buy
The
options.
volatility is crazy with these options.
I don't like volatility.
But the nice thing is, that I don't recommend it for everyone, but if you know what you're doing, it's actually pretty cool if you're able to use it to hedge positions out. So if you have investments in a certain area and you're worried about this is what happened in the banking crisis earlier this year in March, where, all these banks, they could have hedged out the interest rate risk very cheaply, but they just didn't do it.
Yeah, that goes to so many things.
Yeah.
So it's like no one has. This goes to my beef with like venture capitalists today.
Well, let's talk about
and
that.
everybody on Twitter. We're all experts on 9 things.
What's your beef on venture capitalists today?
No, I'm just saying there's just it's
I need some
very
controversial topics.
complicated. No, we'll give you some conflict, but it's very complicated. So I just want to fully disclose that it's hard to beat the market. Warren Buffett has said that. I don't like Warren Buffett
he's
as
right,
much as
though.
the next guy.
He's right. You might as well buy the S&P 500 if you're trying to that's probably the best bet today.
So I'm
for
saying
the
you're
average
asking me
person.
where I'm investing.
And the fees are like minuscule compared to like putting into investment advisors and stuff. What people listening need to appreciate is that when you go to these investment advisors and they try and allocate your money in all these different places, the chances of them actually getting it spot on and beating the S&P 500, especially after the fees that they did, it's almost zero. And Buffett is smart. So if you had a whole bunch of money to deploy today and you wanted to put it into the market, I'd be buying probably Berkshire Hathaway and S&P 500, and there we go. But between the two,
you
between
can
the
go
two,
buy T-bills.
Well,
and earn 6% and no volatility. Why am I not in T-bills?
Why not in T-bills?
Because I was, but now I like cash.
Okay, but why would you not buy T-bills today?
I can't. I don't want to give advice.
But no, I'm asking why wouldn't you buy T-bills today?
I think I would if I was buying 3 months or 6 months.
I wouldn't touch them.
I'm
right
buying
now.
3 months or 6 months.
Even 3 months, you're gonna. I mean, you can hold to maturity. That's fine. But I think that there's probably there's better places to put your money potentially. But the long end of the yield curve is going to struggle for a while, and it really is struggling.
I've spent so much of my life being a closet macro person, and I know you love the subject and you're good at it. The problem I have with macro is I travel. It's so fucking complicated. Yeah. Like when I just got back from Mexico City, it's a miracle I'm alive. And you know what made Mexico?
Why do you say that?
There's so many ways to die on a trip. so, and then I go to Mexico City and we're hopping all over, and I'm like, holy shit, time stood still there. Yet, it's the most tech-forward place for me to live my life. Guess why? Because I had WhatsApp, I had Uber, I had Google Maps, I had Waze, and I had friends, like WhatsApp, like a social network. I like own that city.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, I went into that city. I knew where to go. I knew what neighborhood to be in. I knew what places to shop at. I knew what to eat for breakfast. Holy shit! Like that is, and Jeff Bezos isn't as wired. Maybe he could have stayed at a nicer hotel. Maybe he could have had a better table. But like the average Joe, the middle class Joe, with the right network and the right tools, and all of us have an Android or an iPhone. How little tech you need to be a fucking rock star is magical, but you can still die in a cab, like on a crazy road in Mexico City. So I try not to think about macro because what's the point? Like the point is to wait for fat pitches, and you only have to be right once or twice. So going back to options, and why I love startups.
I think it's generally twice.
Or 5 times.
It depends. It depends how big number one is.
If you really are patient
Yeah.
and build a good network, you will see fat pitches. And if you're trading and doing options, not that I'm against it, I'm just saying if you really want to get wealthy and you've managed to, and you have motivation and you can build a network, which everybody is allowed to do with today, whether it's YouTube, TikTok, podcasts, everybody has a voice and can try and build it. Definitely crowded. Build a network and wait for fat pitches, right? And move your chips there.
Define a fat pitch.
You only know when you know, right? Like a fat pitch to me could be a comedy deal now because I have domain experience. I think a fat pitch comes when you have experience, right? When you see something that other people don't see. So Robinhood, everybody hated that idea in 2013. Why? Because Warren Buffett, Vanguard were coming into vogue, and it was like, you can't beat the market. Guess what? Two things can be right. You can't beat the market, but people want to beat the market. And so what I got right was the fat pitch was I met Baiju and Vlad, and I loved the product they built. And I loved the fact that they were going to do something that the competitors that were trying to. So all the incumbents and all the VCs had decided that the right model was assets under management. So in 2013, there was Betterment, there was Wealthfront, there was like robo-advisor. Every VC was backing a robo-advisor. And what was a robo-advisor? It was software wrapped around a better Vanguard.
You had Wealthfront, you had a whole bunch
Betterment. There was 100 of them. And they were raising hundreds of millions of dollars. And what was their business plan? We're going to be a better Vanguard. And guess what? They weren't 10 times, they weren't even 2 times better than Vanguard. And so the trick was that I was non-consensus because of my background and everything I knew about trading. I didn't believe that Robinhood was going to change the world. I just believed that if they built it, because of what I knew in the fact of running StockTwits, I knew that millions of people would sign up. And that's all I had to get right. I didn't predict GameStop. I didn't predict COVID. I didn't predict, them shutting off accounts. I didn't predict they'd have 20 million accounts. But my simple fat pitch was, if they built this, 1 million people would use it. And back then, 1 million people using an app was guaranteed you were going to get rich. And so a fat pitch to me was a complete hideous idea to 99 VCs that we pitched it to, because they all believed the fat pitch was to build the next Vanguard. And so all those deals are worthless. So
contrarian investing worked for you.
I don't think it's contrarian. I think it's definitely trend following, because the trend was fintech and zero interest rate, an app-built economy, and do it yourself.
But contrarian with the other investors who are declining it, right?
Yes,
so,
consensus venture investing is the dumbest idea. And guess what everybody was doing in 2018 to 2022? Consensus venture momentum investing. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but call it what it is.
Yeah.
And guess what? Some people made money. We know who they are. And some people are left holding the bag. And that is nobody's fault except markets doing their thing. And people need to learn. The markets are fire. If you touch them, they can be dangerous.
Well,
so options. So one last thing. You asked about options. Why I like startups.
Yes.
So imagine, instead of decay, you get intelligence. So when you invest in a startup, assuming they're not a fraudster, assuming they're not idiots, generally humans learn. If you're investing in something that has positive, not decay, but they get smarter, and then you throw network effects and high margins in that, it's almost impossible to lose your money at scale if you invest across 50 startups. And if you do that in a ZERP environment, you might even become a billionaire and have a podcast. So I'm saying if we look back at the period from 2007 or 6 to 2010, even though it included the great financial crisis, you're almost supposed to have gotten wealthy. And that's why I'm trying to be a little bit, it's easy to humble brag, and we have a lot of people that made a lot of money. That was our job. The government made Apple and Google and zero interest rate. And if you work for Facebook, it's not that you were a genius. Congratulations. You were supposed to get rich. That company was destined from like the algorithm to grow. And so now we get into, like you said, I think the big bang is high interest rate and grinding and building a business that's profitable and not scale. So I think it's almost the opposite. It doesn't mean tech won't help. I just think we need to go into the opposite mindset of like, what's your business? When you're seeing this with your new startup, what's my business model? And like, who cares how many people use it? I got to get the unit economics right because I can't raise VC money at a higher valuation. And that's what interest rates do to the world. And that's what you see Mexico, Latin.
The higher rates
inflation
brings a lot of sanity to markets, actually.
So sanity, we can call it what I want. I think the next big bang is not tech, it's sanity. It's what interest rates, it's what the party reeks.
So let's I want to ask for people.
So at
listening-
least I answered,
yeah.
hopefully, the
Yeah,
question.
you did. Thank you. For people listening, and they've got some money to invest. Let's say it's $100,000.
Uh-huh.
How would you suggest they do it?
Oh, that's a good question. Again, I don't like that's still not enough information.
No, I mean, let's say someone's got spare cash. They want to put it away. Like there's
If they
there's a
want-
spectrum of like low, medium, and high risk.
Yeah.
Depending on each person, what would your low risk, medium risk, and high
Well,
risk
the
bet
first
be?
thing you do is you can open a Robinhood account and earn 5% on that $100,000.
Yeah.
Like
So that's
hello.
the easy low risk
Yeah.
option.
If you hate Robinhood,
Fidelity or whatever.
yeah. And if you hate banks, you call Max My Interest, which is another company I invested in, which is just aggregates APIs of all the internet banks and gets
Okay.
you even a higher rate.
Okay.
And you can get your money at any time. So there's a million ways to get 5% today.
So that's the low risk option.
Get in there.
Okay.
And just every day you're like my wife today is like her IRA's got a few $100,000. I go, I don't know what to buy you, but like make sure it's in a 5% earning interest account. So people don't know that.
Mm.
And so by the way, all the smarty pants that were talking about interest rate, only mistake the banks made, the interest rate duration was a mistake.
Yes.
And it was a black hole that was going to get caught. That's all that happened.
Mm.
The internet found a hole. And they decided to care at that moment.
Yes.
But the real problem the banks made was they could have paid 2% to people. Even if they didn't do the interest rate hedging.
Sure.
They were chasing quarterly profits.
And they were paying people.
They should go
nothing
to
on the
jail
credit
for
cards.
that.
Yeah.
Meaning,
on
if
the
they
checking
had
account.
just raised the rates to 2% and kept a 3% spread,
Yeah.
people wouldn't have panicked.
Yeah.
But then people caught on to the fact that these assholes had duration risk and were holding the money.
And
They deserve to
And
fail.
for those listening who
By
don't
the
know-
way, they deserve to fail, and the CEOs of those companies and the marketing departments, they shouldn't be allowed to and people voted. Silicon Valley Bank
Yeah.
was wreckable. It's like the old movie Wall
It
Street.
was right.
What did he say to the kid? It was wreckable, the airline. They left themselves wreckable.
But
the
I
internet
want to explain
found
this
it.
concept for the audience. So just, duration risk. Duration risk is basically when banks buy, the banks take your money. It's called borrow short, lend long.
Mm-hmm.
And so they basically take the money from you. They give you very low interest rates on their money, near zero, in fact, if not zero. Then they go and lend it out.
With leverage.
With leverage. They go buy government bonds, whatever. Government bonds are typically where they put their money because it's seen as a pristine, safe asset. And the accounting rules are that if you take a T-bill, a government bond, on your balance sheet as a bank, and you mark it as held to maturity, so you say, I'm going to hold it for 5 years or 10 years, then
Considered gold.
It's considered gold, and you don't have to value it every month or whatever, every
Or
quarter.
every hour.
Or every hour based upon the market value of those bonds because you've already pledged to hold them to maturity, and you can borrow from the Fed based upon that. What happened at Silicon Valley Bank is depositors started putting their money out. People started getting worried, and they couldn't raise enough capital to pay off the depositors because they had all this money stuck in bonds.
Mm-hmm.
So their balance sheet, what they showed the market, or at least the financial, and what they showed the market, was very different to what was the case because these bonds dropped in value over time. And so because the rates went up, the value of the bonds dropped. And so they actually had a cash shortfall, a pretty big hole.
Mm-hmm.
And the Fed had to step in and backstop them.
Yeah.
But that's
Again.
duration risk. It's basically when you...
And then the podcaster stepped
Yep.
in and
Yeah.
came up with
And
all their
accelerated that.
conspiracy
Yeah,
theories.
yeah.
But again, I don't blame any of these people. This is why I don't like macro.
I blame the regulators.
Exactly.
I blame the regulators.
You also got to blame the exec team. Someone in marketing should have said, wouldn't it be a good idea if we got this duration risk? Even if they didn't understand duration risk, they go, hey guys, we're paying zero. Like,
Yeah.
even if we email all our customers today and say we're offering 2%, they won't move. But at least we will say that we offer 2%.
Yeah.
That little swing would have kept those banks alive. They would have created some loyalty. You're asking a guy to be loyal when you've been sticking it to him and blew up your own balance sheet?
Yeah.
People should have ran. Those companies should be destroyed. And guess what? It's bad for the shareholders.
Yeah.
But
Well,
people
I-
need to learn that these are speculative pieces of paper that they own. And if
This
you
is-
want 6% interest,
Yeah.
you got to buy a T-bill. And if you don't believe the U.S. government, there's still risk. U.S. government. Now, normally, I would say if U.S. government goes, we have bigger problems.
Yeah.
So again, like you asked me why I'm not scared of T-bills quite yet is because I don't know if T-bills goes, we got problems.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's actually fascinating. When the whole banking crisis sort of emerged in March of this year, 2023, Um, do you think that the Fed was right to step in and backstop the banks from a liquidity perspective?
Again, I lose either way because I'm privileged, but
Yeah.
I was nervous like you were nervous.
Yeah.
We had companies that for some reason, so again, do you want to know why I don't like VCs? Many reasons. It's first of all because they're just people, and we put them on this pedestal. Like I don't like to be called like you're reaping praise. I mean, our job is to return money to our LPs, right? We work for our LPs. Somehow it's
limited
become
partners.
where we work. These founders are special
Well,
warriors.
and let's just explain what LPs are again for some
a
people.
limited partner.
A limited. So when you have a VC fund, you have a GP, which is Howard
Yeah.
running the fund, general partners, and then you have limited partners, people who put money in.
Yeah.
They're basically just risking their capital.
Yeah.
Howard's risking his time and
Like a
everything
hedge
else.
fund.
It's like a hedge
I'm
fund.
their steward of capital.
Yeah.
I'm confined to doing certain things, unlike a hedge fund, which allows you to collect butterflies,
Yeah.
I guess, or whatever the hell you want to do. But my job was to invest in software startups. And I believe I work for my LPs. Like, you like me, not because I'm smart. We return capital.
You make money. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the contract, I think. Now, do I need to be founder friendly? Absolutely, because we're partners.
Yeah.
But I'm saying you've got to put these things in context, like who you answer to. We all work for somebody, and so the way I grew up with, luckily I'm wired properly, is like, you work for your shareholder, or you work for, everybody's got a boss. And so to me, my boss is the LPs. And I think in the venture world, it just got distorted. And pendulum just swung too far for money. There's just loose money. There's all these reasons. And VCs are just human beings with their own fear and greed. And, people need to just kind of respect the profession. I think the industry, the profession, much like investment banking in the 80s and then engineering, Stanford engineering, everything became like hot. Like you had to have this pedigree. And then the world just doesn't work that way, And now we're in this next trend, which is exciting because you got to reinvent yourself, right?
Yeah.
If the market's not going to reinvent you, like you know this well enough, every 7 to 10 years, man.
Yeah.
Don't be a lifer. Like mix it up.
What do you think the big opportunities are out there right now? If like for entrepreneurs wanting to start a business, or even, what are you seeing the trends? I mean, AI is obviously big, but the jury's still out on that. But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Okay, so it depends what type of entrepreneur. I've never been more excited, but it's been 3 years of hell. Like I was bearish, not shorting the market. I was just, the prices made me freaked out because the math stopped making sense. Like the math was just starting to get silly. So everything started to look the same. I got a lending business. I'm gonna, I've got an app. But then you started realizing, like, wait a minute, like, how are we getting users, right? And everybody was just buying users, and the price of buying those users went up. So what makes me excited now is, and this is my trick for watching the stock market, is margins and raising less capital. So I think the art of raising, it was stupid not to raise a lot of capital in a zero interest rate world. It was free. Like, go get it. In a world where capital is scarce, if you're not an entrepreneur that's thinking, screw the VC, I have to build a business that VCs don't, like, will beg to get in, but they're not necessary, right? We went from a world where VCs were necessary because, and they weren't they thought they were necessary. They were necessary if you were a good founder because capital was cheap. Like, why not open China?
Yeah.
Okay, even though it's a bad idea, why not? Like Fred Wilson, who taught me the business, is like, he never thought of a company of going internationally until year 7. By like 2016, you were international in your 6th month. Okay, what, did the rule book change that much? So what I think becomes exciting is finding things in niches and really exploiting those niches, right? And so who's done it before? Lulu did it in Lulu's built a roadmap for people to do this. Yoga. Remember they started out as like, who does yoga? Now it's like a clothing lifestyle. Like everybody's copying Lulu, Voiri. So how do you take playbooks of great brands and shrink the timeline is my new thing. So Voiri did it with Lulu. And if Lulu doesn't do this deal with Peloton, they're upsettable.
Mm.
Like this Lulu Peloton deal, this is why Lulu's Lulu. Like just when it looks like Aloe's coming from them and Vuari's coming from, they go cut that Peloton deal. Now they're in cycling.
Yeah.
And Vuari's flat-footed. Cycling's a big business. So I think you have to be a great businessman.
Mm-hmm.
So it's up to investors like us who have been around the block to both, if we want to start a company, assume you're not going to get VC money.
Mhm.
And that's actually not a good signal. And then the second thing is, can I build a business that's sustainable quickly?
Mm.
Won't be sexy, but like, what does my customer look like today?
Profits
Will
are
they
the
pay?
Profits are the best source of investment.
Yeah. And remember who, like my, running a fund, my customer is my LP.
Mm.
The best thing to remember is Amazon stuff is like, it's your customer, man. And, product built companies that assume you can just find new customers every minute. That was the Airbnb era. It was a beautiful moment. It was so much fun. We can all agree it was magical. That's over.
Yeah.
I think it's over. So I'm just trying to be, what gets me excited is people that think the way I think.
Mm.
Doesn't mean I'm going to create billion-dollar companies, but what's wrong with a $100 million company? I think we have to retrain our brains.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about emerging platforms like Apple's Vision glasses?
As someone who buys toys like that, it's a dream. Like when I go on an airplane, I got 9 things, and I still see the light. I still got the guy snorting boogers on me. I still have to hear the flight attendant serve me bad food. I want to signal to people to leave me alone. And there's certain places, like an airplane, where that is like the dream product. It's leave me alone, and oh my God, I can't wait to get on an airplane.
I'm gonna have to buy a lot of batteries.
So I'm saying, like, I don't know if it'll work, but I'm a customer.
I mean, I know people who've tried it and they've all said it's amazing.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it'll work, but I'm a customer.
Yeah.
I also love, and I'm not a Facebook fan, the Ray-Ban
Yes.
idea. I'm
Meta,
sorry, that was a smart move.
Yeah.
Ray-Bans are cool,
Maybe-
even though it's owned by Luxottica and is a commodity.
I actually might get one and use it in the next episode.
My friend in Israel was wearing it on the beach. It's fucking great. He was
Well,
wearing an old
No,
version. And I still
I'm
loved
gonna
it.
get one for the podcast.
Why not?
And wear it, and then edit that video into the clip. So now there's like the first person view of
Listen,
what's
immersive
going
is
on.
cool.
Yeah.
I'm not a gamer, so I don't care about gaming immersive. Immersive movies, cool.
Yeah.
Immersive eyeglasses, nah. Passive AR eyeglasses, fun.
Mm.
Ray-Ban, cool brand. So I used to have this thesis. Again, that's why I love the stock market, is not picking stocks, but just watching the behavior and watching things. Oakley. There was a period in time. Luxottica owns everybody right now. So Luxottica is like, you may not have heard of them, but they're an Italian brand that's bought every glasses, right? And they just manufacture them in China in different fashion. Blah. They're the LVMH glasses. But there was a time when Oakley was a cool company, and Oakley still is a big company, now owned by Luxottica. But there was a time when Oakley had stores that were cooler than they. And again, this is pre-iPod. When you would go to a mall and you were like, couldn't wait to go to the Oakley store, because guess what they did? They partnered with Motorola. This is the world's not long ago. And they had an ugly Motorola thing on the side of their Oakley.
I remember those.
With Bluetooth.
Yeah.
It was
I remember
fucking
those.
genius.
Yeah.
Now here's what Oakley got wrong. They fucking stapled these things. You couldn't put them on. They were behind glass. You know what I mean? They just assumed everybody would steal them.
Mm.
So you couldn't interact with it. And they got almost everything right. And it still has, and so Ray-Ban and Facebook is the closest thing in 20 years to where Oakley and Motorola were 20 years ago. And as much as I
old is
don't
new.
think Facebook is cool, and I know that Ray-Ban's owned by Luxottica, so you asked me the next big trend, fashion, I call it fashology. Like Lulu's not a fashion company, not a technology, they're a little bit of both, right? They're not tech, but they're kind of tech. They're not fashion because they're like sloppy fashion, but they're fashion. So it's fashion meets technology. Apple's the 2 biggest companies in the world right now, in my mind, are people say Tesla. It's Apple and LVMH.
Mm.
LVMH is not a technology company. It's a high margin design company. Apple's all of them. They're fashion, but how you disrupt Apple is lightweight, immersive tech inside unbelievable fashion. So there is a way that brands can chip away, but Apple's doing an amazing job at scale, mind-boggling to be able to get us excited about stuff like that. But fashology is like my favorite idea.
That's great.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I want to ask you some sort of life questions. What moment for you was the penny drop moment where you realized that you could become successful in whatever your career was going to be?
Later than I was a late bloomer because I was cold call. I didn't have a real job. I didn't have money. I would say I was sitting. So I had started a company called Wall Strip. It was not a good idea. It was my video.
Yeah.
So I was this disgruntled bad trader, like running a hedge fund, and I didn't have enough. I went to ASU, so I'm not in the crew, and so I would watch CNBC. I was on Yahoo message boards. I wasn't like in the cool. I didn't have Bloomberg, so my world was like, "Who's this idiot?" Like I would talk to my TV and go, "What is this?" Like I would just be mad at my TV. It'd be like an old man watching Fox News or MSNBC, and I was like, "This idiot! I can't believe he's back on TV." Right? That's what you did as a hedge fund manager. So YouTube comes out, and a light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, I'm going to create CNBC on YouTube. That was my moment. Sounds like a stupid idea, but luckily Fred Wilson, I pitched him, who loved the idea. And so what changed my life was that Fred, who was a tech guy, I'm not a tech guy, thought that, wow, wait a minute, YouTube, he's going to create a 24-hour CNBC running on YouTube. That was 2006 idea. Fred knew that was a good idea and invested in it, even though I wasn't a tech guy. But so that was the first confidence booster because he knew something that I didn't know. And then the second was when CBS bought the company, and I was sitting waiting for my check, like waiting to sign. I'd started the company, and 6 months later, CBS acquired it. And I'm like, it felt like a Seinfeld moment. I'm like, wait a minute. This is like a ruse. Like I'm in Les Moonves' office, and I'm in CBS BlackRock, and they're about to pay me a lot of money for a show that had no revenue. And so I think like having that happen to you is like surreal. And I didn't fully enjoy it because I wasn't rich and the transaction wasn't so big. But just seeing me in that, just being in the room and just seeing the poker, like seeing the, what do you call it, the Wizard of Oz moment, like when you realize nobody knows what the hell they're doing, is just such, if you can teach your kids something, it's like it's poker, right? Like it's why people love poker. It's like, I don't like poker, but I get why people like it. Because you can be sitting next to a guy who has no money and we're equal, right? And that's why it's so global. It's like the table is the table.
Yeah.
And I think entrepreneurship is the closest thing you get where the table is the table. Then when you get into the room, like the CBS, and they write you a check, you're like, these idiots, what the hell are they doing? Then you realize it's a game and stacking chips and everybody has a different risk profile. But, so for me, it came in my 40s. And I would think with my kids, I'm trying to make sure they get that feeling in their 20s. Not helicopter parenting that you're great. We do that too. But it's like, dude, like you can do, like there's things out there like your 10,000 hours and like you're chasing your passion. You want your kids to experience. Why wait till your 40s? Yeah. That's like, I'd like to accelerate that for people.
What's the most challenging experience you ever had in your life? I mean, what is your darkest moment?
So the darkest moment for most people, obviously, other than a bad health. And so I've had a health dark moment, forget that.
Take the health out.
Yeah. So the dark moment is business. And any dark moment for any of us, people in crypto had it with FTX. A lot of smart people get rused. So being defrauded is fucking crazy. And, it's going to happen to people, especially if they take risk. And it shakes you because you knew this person, or you thought you knew this person, or you realize all the things that you could have done. They're like, oh. And so that stuff shakes your confidence. So when I was an entrepreneur in my hedge fund, in order to improve my business, I wanted to improve your margin, you got to own the broker-dealer so you make more money. You spend less money on the trade, right? Like, so it's the beginning of fractional. Like, the only way is to own them vertical. So I took some risk and partnered with some guys to own my own broker-dealer. And long story short, like the person that we hired to like be our compliance person was stealing from us, which is the perfect crime, I guess.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And so that moment when the rug gets pulled
Mhm.
and you feel like the dummy and it's your company and you go from like, we're in business to zero. I hope people don't have that business unless they're enemies of mine. But if, you don't wish. So to live through that with my wife and like have to tell my wife that, we're a zero, like the partner, like it's a zero.
Mhm.
And then in my business to have to call the SEC and say, we got a problem, like to call the authorities and say, there's been a crime here and you're the one cleaning it up and you don't know how the authorities are going to react. So to go through that and have to live through that, I wouldn't like when you kind of are the innocent bystander and do the cleanup is a low moment.
How long did it take you to get over that?
I'm talking about it, so you're never over it. I think some people say don't carry grudges. My trick is I carry grudges.
How long ago was this?
It was 1990,
Wow.
90, 2000, no, right after the crash. So
Okay.
I survived the crash. It was 2001.
Okay.
But 2001. And by the grace of being smart enough to have fraud insurance, like as a firm.
Oh, wow. It
Yeah,
was-
I mean, you're supposed to
yeah.
have fraud insurance. And even though the world was coming to an end, 9/11 and blah, 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 our insurance company
Paid
covered a
out.
lot of the damage. But just to clean up something that isn't yours.
I get it.
And you get why people are so mad at like Biden or Trump. Like
Yeah.
it feels like we're cleaning up nonsense, right? And so people go, you're so mad. I'm like, not mad at the politics or things. I get mad at the people that create messes because they don't realize the messes they leave behind and just the trauma that they leave, right? And so anyways, that would be the moment. But they pass. Like if you just work through them, like it's amazing what time kind of heals these things.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, time heals wounds. I mean, I think most of my scars early in my career kind of heal. The wounds that they're scars, I don't really think about it too often. Sometimes I'll think about it, but it doesn't like, I don't have an emotional, I don't feel anything emotional pain from those moments.
Yeah, I mean, from what I know, everybody's got a different risk profile.
Yeah.
So when I see Elon Musk, okay, call him a great entrepreneur. I think he's insane.
Yeah.
Enjoy your life. Like, what are you reading? People yell at me, why are you reading Twitter? I'm like, well, because I'm 58 and it's my entertainment and I don't have to do payroll. And I'm like, it's a different thing for me to be mad at him. I'm like, dude, I don't even believe your tunnel thing. God bless you. I don't like your car. I'm not into rockets. But like, dude, you're making bad choices. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm going to call you out on that. So I really am. I'm really fascinated by people that just
what
decide not
choices
to
in
live
particular
their life.
of his do you think are bad?
No, just be nice. Like I know he's on the drug, right? He's getting the crack cocaine directly into his soul, like the pipe, the pipe that is Twitter. It's not going to make you a nicer person.
Yeah.
That'll turn the nicest person into the most hardened, evil person. It's very dark.
The trolls on Twitter are pretty bad.
But it's a dark world.
Yeah.
And the Twitter world is a very dark world. It's very smart. It's very funny. It's just very dark. And I think that is not good for anybody's soul to just own it and to kind of live on it. So when you have a choice not to do it, I don't know, like I like him as my guiding light to say, man, I'm glad I'm not doing that. I think I've made some good choices. My kids are talking to me, and so my advice is more lifestyle wise. Like I'm at 58, so I'm like, okay, man, like I don't want to risk it all.
So what's the one? What's the one area of personal growth that you really are focusing on right now?
Not this whole funny thing about living forever. It's got me cracked up because I look at it from a comedy.
I don't want to live forever. Do you want to live forever?
Well, there's this guy that started.
Like, how many years do you want? How many more years do you want?
So this is a great question. So you're asking me what my focus is, and we can end on this. This is the most important question. Is like, how much time do you have?
Yeah.
So Jim O'Shaughnessy, another mentor, he's an unbelievable quant guy, and he's on Twitter, and his son Patrick, his podcast, Patrick O'Shaughnessy.
Oh yeah.
Best. Anyways, Jim has this great. I don't know who told him. It's like, when you're 20, you're a time billionaire. It's one time you're going to be a billionaire with time. And when you're 58, you're a time thousandaire. So no matter how much money I have, I'm a time thousandaire right now. So everything I do, when I choose to do it, like when I truly plan my trips to Europe or Israel, when I truly plan my trips, they are meant for high fun, high engagement. So my crazy cycling trips or my comedy excursions. Like I want to make money. I don't want to piss my money away, but I also want to experience like the joy of that
Of living.
activity.
Yeah.
And so my whole life is about not taking Ozempic and like going on crazy diets, but like getting my weight to like a 170 number. I'm at 182 and I was at 200, but no drugs, no crazy diets. Too much cycling, I've decided. So I got to do less cycling, more diet. Like some kind of balance
yeah.
that leads to a reasonable number that gets me through my 70th birthday doing fun things. Above 70, it's a crapshoot. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. How good can your life
I mean,
be?
I don't know if I want to live. I mean, I want to live a high quality of life. I'm not sure what that end age is, but when shit starts breaking, and I'm like 78, 80, 81, I'm done. Like,
Done.
I don't know how Feinstein was like still trying to be.
That's my point.
At 90 years old, like
because
it's
no
just-
one's voting proper.
Yeah, but like no, but still, why would you want? I mean, what sort of power do you want to still be working at 90? And not just, I mean, look, I will say one thing. Like I look at Warren Buffett at 90 something, 96, 97, whatever he is, and Munger. Wow, those guys are sharp at their age.
yeah, your brain can be
like,
sharp.
They're sharp. I don't think they
But
work. I don't
trust
think-
me,
I
they're
don't
not
think-
reading.
Yeah, they're
'cause
not
you can't
working.
read.
Mm.
Okay, because I'm wearing 2 times readers at 58. Okay, so they're lying.
No, I
Here's what they're doing.
I think they
They have
probably
a
do
great
read.
network. Well, they
Yeah.
read. They
Yeah.
read tweets or they read paragraphs. They read AI. AI is good for
Yeah.
these guys, but like they have a network around them that does the work. They're decision makers. You can be a great decision maker in your 80s if you surround yourself with good information. So I want to make good decisions the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But when I'm 70, am I going to be climbing Alps mountains on my bike? Hopefully I've moved on to something that a 70-year-old does. But I don't want to be 70 on some
Golf.
cruise with 2,000 old people. Okay, get on the deck to see the glacier. Like that's what retirement was. Just think about a whole generation that was saving
Yeah.
for that moment.
Yeah.
That was a lie. The lie of this generation would be, I want to live forever. How about living?
Yeah.
Put the phone down.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm going to go
Be
to
present.
U2 with my son.
Be present.
And I said, I just
Yeah.
want to, I know you don't think it's bad, but don't bring your phone. Like at comedy shows now, at the Comedy Cellar, they take your phone.
Yeah.
Put it in a wrapper. They shouldn't have to tell you, but at least they do. And guess what? It becomes, you hand over your phone. Okay. At the Sphere, they're not. So everything I see is the guy holding his phone. I'm like, that idiot needs to be smacked in the head.
looking at old concert movies like Live Aid.
Lighters.
No, Live Aid. Yeah, so they had lighters,
Lighters.
yeah. But it Light Aid with Freddie Mercury.
Yeah.
No one had a phone back
They almost
in those
didn't
days.
have a footage of it.
It was crazy.
That's
yeah,
why
yeah.
the movie worked, because
Yeah,
there was
yeah.
no footage.
Yeah,
So yeah, it goes to why YouTube is the most undervalued company maybe on the planet
yeah.
still.
You just
It's a product and maps. But so living in the moment, because you're not going to live forever. So anybody who tells you you're going to live forever is the same person that tells you that you can make money in the stock market. Okay, take the averages and live the best life you can within those numbers. And if you get surprise yourself,
Great. Good for you.
great.
Okay. What's your best book that you recommend?
I've written some doozies. No, the best idea is not to write a book.
No, sorry.
Yeah,
Ba-
I
ba-
read-
best
I
book.
read about-
Let me rephrase
Yeah.
that. What's the best book you've read?
So, I
you've
don't
read
read
that-
many books.
You don't read books, okay.
Okay, so I subscribe to the Morgan Housel, who's a great writer. If you start a book and it's not great, I don't care what you pay.
Yeah,
Put it down.
I'm chronic at putting books down.
Yeah. Okay. So the last book that I read, there's 2 books that I've recently read again that are fantastic. Shoe Dog, which is Phil Knight's.
That's the one I recommend to people.
Yeah.
That's mine.
And because I probably told you. And then no, I'm kidding, but it's great. Why? Because he lived in a different era.
Yeah.
He was an entrepreneur in an era where like he had to leave his family for a month. Okay. Then the second one was Agassi's.
you
Andrew
enjoy it?
Agassi's book.
I haven't read that.
It's the same guy who wrote. Anyways, unbelievable book.
Okay.
Andre Agassi is a great story.
I started on that. I didn't actually keep
It's
going.
fantastic.
Okay.
And then from an investing standpoint, I recommend everybody read Reminiscence of a Stock Operator, which is an old book about it's about a bull market. It's a famous trader who ends up killing himself. It's the only investing book you probably need to read.
Okay. Well, we'll include those in the show notes below.
Yeah, so 3 good books.
People can find it. Thanks.
I think reading books is somewhat overrated. I hate saying that.
I actually agree with you. I
hate saying
I get
it. I
most
don't
of my knowledge these days. I'd say, I mean, obviously, I read a bit, not too much. I get a lot of YouTube stuff. There's a lot of very deep technical content on YouTube by people who are just experts in their field, and there's just no reason why you shouldn't use YouTube. It's like the Library of Alexandria. You have, think about it. With a couple of keywords, you can find almost anything on YouTube about any topic.
I'm super bullish on that. I'm super bullish on self-learning. I'm super bullish on managing your time, being nice to yourself, like just not being anxious all the time. I'm big on like if you have anxiety, taking drugs, like whatever works to keep. If you are anxious all the time, you are not living life. So whatever it takes to take the edge off.
But then work towards fixing the underlying issues.
For me, everything has a trade-off. So the pills that you take for anxiety help you keep weight on. So at some point, you're not going to lose weight if you're taking certain medications.
Yeah.
So you've got to balance.
What's the best bit of financial advice you've ever received?
Like I've never gotten good advice, but financial advice is like yoga. It's a practice, right? So Stockdust has taught me you can say the same thing over again. It's not old because it's good advice. So the best advice is know yourself. Like be honest with what your risk profile is. And if people really, so there's no risk score. So again, a company that I'd like to see, I blog about it every year, is you can go into a mattress store and you can see your risk, you can see your fucking sleep number. I'm a 59. How the fuck, like, and now there's like 8 sleep.
I use 8 sleep. 8 sleep is fantastic.
I don't know. I'm not against it.
Have you tried it?
Yeah, look how ugly I still am. I don't know. I sleep on an 8 sleep. I'm not Cinderella. I know people love it.
It cools me down.
O'Shaughnessy is an investor. It's a great product.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not a data guy.
Yeah.
So for me, what were we talking about? That was important. We were talking about sleep. What were we talking about?
Financial advice.
Oh, financial advice. It's a practice. Yeah. It's a habit. So I think that it's how do you build a good habit? And a good habit of investing, and I taught my kids this, is when you see a lot of red, days and days of red, green will follow if you live in America. Yeah. So when you see red, don't get nervous, get excited. And when you see green, endless green,
don't get excited.
Don't get excited, get a little skeptical. So I say what I try and tell people and what Stocktwist is trying to do with sentiment is it's very hard to stay in the market.
Yeah.
And so the only way to make money is to be invested.
Yeah.
And so media's job is to get you out of the market. I don't know why it's their job. It's just they're the devil. And so it's like sugar. It's like not good for you, but it's addictive. So the more you can stay in the market. So whatever your risk profile is, figure it out.
Yeah.
And then whatever that risk profile is that says you can take risks, stay in.
Yeah.
And then when your deepest, darkest voices are saying get out, maybe put a little more money in. No, I'm saying, and when your deepest, darkest voices are saying you're smart and you should take your shirt off and post a selfie on Twitter and say you're going to fuck things up, I would say it's time to sell a little bit.
That's what I meant.
Yeah. So,
I mean, I've been through a couple of these bubble bust cycles in different industries and macro, crypto, multiple times.
You don't think it can happen again?
Yeah, you think, and you always think this time it's different. Yeah. It's a bigger. I mean, the last crypto bubble, I was a little bit more bullish, thinking, it's gone global, it's gone mainstream, everyone around the world is doing it, and then you just eventually realize like this stuff is just the same cycle over and over. Yes, there's going to be another crypto bubble at some point.
Yeah.
They will. It's just human nature. When? Who knows? But there will be another one.
It's beautiful. And
greed
cycles
and fear.
are beautiful.
Greed and fear. Everything's greed and fear.
Fear and greed. So those are that. So hopefully that helps. Yoga just practice.
Practice the good stuff.
Yeah, practice the good stuff. Build good habits.
What's a common misconception about business or life that you'd like to set the record straight on?
Again, I'm born on third base. So what is a common misconception? I don't know. I try not to.
Well, what's your most contrarian view in life right now?
God, I'm a trend follower. So my most contrarian view is that tech doesn't matter. Like my
Okay.
Mexico City thing. Like
Okay.
how deep tech you can be with little tech.
Okay.
Meaning
Simple
your phone's in your
yeah.
pocket,
Yeah.
WhatsApp, no Twitter, a good group of friends that have traveled, you can get anywhere.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So my contrarian view is less tech.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you go back in time and meet one person in history, who would it be and why?
Yeah, that's a good question. Dead?
Dead or alive?
Like I said, I think the fantasy was a kid was Johnny Carson
Okay.
and being called over, like doing a bit,
Mm.
and then he calls you over. Like everybody, any great comedian tells you that was their moment. So if that would be my honest fantasy moment.
Okay. So people can find you on your blog, howardlindzon.com, your podcast,
Panic
it's
with Friends. Now I have a show called
Trains with Friends. Yeah, yeah.
It's more fun. You
Okay.
got to come on. We
Okay.
talk stocks. And
Okay.
it's just more Howard. It's just like,
Mhm.
I'm not an expert. I have all my friends who I trust.
Mhm.
And we're not telling you what to do. We just like talking about the market.
Yeah.
And I think it's like a gossip show.
That's cool.
Because I finally found the format that I like. Now,
Okay.
it's even dumber than my life. It's very narrow,
Okay.
but I'm having a ball.
Podcasts are fun. And then on social media, on
Yeah.
X or Twitter, you're on Howard
yeah.
at Howard Lindzon.
Yeah.
Howard, it's been a great chat. Enjoyed having you on the show.
How much do we go? How
we were
far
done.
do we do?
Yeah.
I had this idea where the show starts.
Yeah.
So this is a show I wrote for 824. It's venture capitalists in private planes eating sushi. So it's comedians in cars getting coffee, but with venture capitalists and great families. Okay, so I go and I pitched this show. I was going to make it, and so I show up, Mark Andreessen. I go, Mark? Where are you at? And and then I pick him up in a private plane near the airport close to us. So I ask him for his favorite food, and we go on a plane. And I do the interview, and then halfway through the interview, I pull out 20 milligrams of two pills, Adderall or Ambien. You take one of the pills, and then just let the show play out. Like one of us is sleeping within 10 minutes, and that's how the show ends each time. And so that's the show I'm probably going to do next.
It sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Howard, it's been great having you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yep. It was fun.
And it was fun. And
Glad you're doing it. It is fun, right? To interview friends and kind of see.
Exactly. It's just this is meant to be me having some really good conversation with really interesting people, friends, new friends, old friends, and just trying to get get an insight into the world we live in. Because I think my favorite sort of topic of books is autobiographies. I love hearing about people's lives. That's like my favorite thing. Like
Like I said, Shoe Dog and
amazing.
Angiography. Like you don't know what made these people. They're neurotic bundles of fucking. And like to hear his son, passed away. People have horror stories.
Yeah, I mean it's great. It's great to sort of hear firsthand accounts of like your journey, etc. So thank you so much,
It's fun to
and
do.
hopefully have you on soon.
Okay.
Cheers.